My loss did affect my hope for the future at first. I did feel like everything was pointless, that we're all just gonna die anyway. What's the point? It's just gonna all end abruptly.
All the hopes and dreams that Rick and I had, all the plans that we'd made, we're gonna do this then and that then, they were just gone. So I didn't have any future. My future was with him. And it really felt empty. It felt pretty awful. Like, why am I here?
After my wife, Lisa, passed away, I remember being devastated, and we had so many plans for the future. I think for a while I was thinking there really is no point in planning the future because it could change for all of us just like that.
I looked forward to becoming a mother. I looked forward to traveling with my husband. I looked forward to starting a business. I couldn't look forward to any of those things anymore. I stopped looking forward to anything.
2 people were killed in their home near Wendell, North Carolina. The shooter had previously threatened his wife, LaTanya, and Wednesday evening he entered the house, killed both her parents, and shot her twice in front of their 2 children.
My ex-husband came into the home and he shot my mother and shot my father multiple times. And while this is going on, I'm on the phone with 911. And I laid the phone down because I knew I was next. And he comes in the back of the room. My kids are literally right beside me in a closet screaming. And I'm fighting for my life. And I remember him standing over me and shooting me. I suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one to the face across my mouth and a gunshot wound to my heart. I was in a coma for 7 days.
The shattering of a piece of pottery reflects how grievers feel about their lives after the death of a loved one. Life can't go on as it had been without that key person in it, just like a piece of broken pottery can no longer be used as it had been.
Yes, but what if those broken pieces could be reused to make an even more striking and beautiful bowl? That intriguing possibility is what we want to talk about today. Life can go on, even though it will look different.
In today's session, we'll talk about 2 key ingredients needed to repair your life after loss: hope and resilience. Hope will give you courage to look for new possibilities, and resilience will sustain you as you move toward those new possibilities. Welcome to Grief Share.
When my sister-in-law died, and there was no resolution to the conflict, to the estrangement of our relationship or of her life, the fairy tale ending never happened. And now I realized many other wishes may not come true as well. That realization took me into a hopeless place.
When I don't believe that times can get better, when I don't believe that a brighter day is coming, when I don't believe that there's the best is yet to come, that's the absence of hope. And in that context, then my life doesn't mean much to me.
When we lose hope, we end up making very bad decisions. When we forget that God is a God of hope, that there's meaning and purpose in our lives, we do very tragic things.
Hope is critical in the life of a human being. Hope is what keeps us going, but the question then becomes what do we place our hope in? And what are we hoping for?
It's so important to understand two key aspects of biblical hope. First, God is at work in your life right now, even though circumstances are as horrible as they are. He has not abandoned you. And second, God's plan for his children extends into eternity.
That's why, even when your life is shattered by current losses, there still can be a future to look forward to.
Before my sister-in-law died, I think how I would have defined hope would have been more like wishing. I think I believed in the fairy tale endings, and that's what my hope was in.
Hope has to do with confidence and not with speculation.
Hope is not a sympathy card sentiment. It's not a philosophy.
It is a calm assurance that we know that no matter what happens to us, that God is in charge, even though the tears fall down my cheeks.
True hope is always found in the God who knows us better than we know ourselves, who knows what we need more than we know what we need. I say often, a God who has a tremendous vantage point from where he sits, that no matter how bad things are, he has a perspective that we don't have. He can see things that we cannot see, things that we could never even fathom that are happening behind the scenes that we have no context for. He knows what's going on. He is in control of everything. When we have hope in that person, then all those problems that we have can pale in comparison because we know that there's an answer out there.
When my wife and I lost a daughter, I'll never forget this. I was on my knees praying. My heart was broken. And yet, in the midst of all of that, I knew that God, even though I didn't understand why this had happened and what was going on, I knew that God was on his throne and that he was in charge, even though I had to embrace the pain.
Walter's first daughter, Hope, was stillborn while he was starting a new career as a pastor. He knew that the Bible called him to grieve with hope, but he wasn't sure what that really meant.
I was very idealistic when I was younger, when we lost our daughter. And I did think grieving without hope meant I had to not communicate any emotion, but to just continue on, act like nothing happened.
As Christians, we don't grieve as those without hope. I think for a while there was a part of me that read that and walked away thinking that because we're Christians, we don't grieve. But that's not what Paul's saying. He's just saying that in your grief process, there's still hope.
To grieve with hope, it means that there is the grief, there's tears, there's pain, there's acknowledgement of those things. But then knowing that God hasn't left us there, that, God is still with us in those struggles.
That's where sort of the tension is, because it's like, okay, well, but we live in a world where bad things happen, right? And that's the reality. But instead of always thinking that bad things are going to happen because bad things happen, like being able to have sort of this holy optimism that's directed towards God and his character and the possibilities of what he can do, that could make our situation or our circumstances better.
Another characteristic of hope is that you need to nurture it in order for it to grow.
And because hope is based on God's plan and promises, nurturing hope means reflecting on them in a variety of ways.
I think nurturing hope in your life goes along with that process of renewing your mind, which is aligning your thoughts with what the Bible says. And the more you read the Bible, the more you're going to learn about God's promises for you, for the present and for the future. And I think that's a way of feeding your hope?
One of the passages that has been helpful in this regard is Jeremiah 31:13. It says, I will turn their mourning into joy. I will comfort them and exchange their sorrow for rejoicing. Now you'll notice it doesn't say immediately. It just tells us this is going to occur. And this is where it's been helpful that, and some people have shared this with me, that they've made this scripture into a banner. And they read it several times during the day as a reminder that eventually this is the direction I will be moving.
The other passage I really like is the book of Lamentations. Right in the middle of chapter 3, he says, but this I call to mind, therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His mercies are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. Though he brings grief, yet will he show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. And that passage has always gripped me because it feels so odd that you can watch 3 chapters of awful things happening, and then he says, I have hope. And I want to say, why? Why do you have hope? And he says, because of God's character, because of who God is, because of God's great love, because his mercies are new every morning. God's character, his ways reorient us. They define and make sense out of our experiences. And that's what gives us hope.
The gift of hope and the surety of eternity with the Lord has become more real to me as I grieve. I just was so grateful that I knew the promises of God and that I can read them again every day and be reminded of them and to know that it's true. I continued reading my Bible regularly, and that is always a help and encouragement.
In addition to reading about the promises of God for his people, many people also find singing about those promises is another powerful way to nurture hope.
The most helpful thing I could do was to sing. When you sing, your heart and your mind sort of work together. That's actually a wonderful thing. So singing the truths that are of our God is such a wonderful and powerful thing.
I'm glad that I have a lot of praise and worship music. First thing I would do when I woke up in the morning was blast that. I would fill the room in my heart with Jesus. And all I can tell you was it was elevating.
I had a hymn book in my house, and I would just open up hymns. I love to sing, but I can't sing. But I was alone, and I could sing as loud as I wanted to sing.
A local church is the primary place to learn about God and his promises from the scriptures and to reflect on those truths in worship songs.
One of the greatest ways God has helped me is by placing me in the church, placing me with other believers in Jesus who are following him in faith, who have hope that he's actually conquered death in the resurrection, and who then share that hope with each other when we go through the various trials and circumstances of life.
I'll never forget the first Sunday that I came back into church. People, of course, were coming, leaning in and hugging me and loving on me. And for the weeks and months after that, I was getting notes of encouragement. So the church family was absolutely amazing.
So the Bible calls us in Romans 12 to weep with those who weep and to rejoice with those who rejoice. So the church community is meant to be this family and to share in that together.
I don't think I would have made it through like I did if it weren't for the local church. I would go as often as I could to just be a part of the body of Christ. And many of them would be checking up on me and still bringing some food and showing their acts of kindness in different ways. And oftentimes during songs of worship, I would start weeping, sometimes even wailing. Thank God the music was loud, so not everybody could hear me, but I'm sure those in front of me, behind me, could hear, and many of them were weeping too.
Being involved with a local church certainly can help you in your grief journey. But if you're uncomfortable with the thought of getting fully involved right now, that's understandable. So you might try the strategy that Carla and her family used after the death of her husband.
Going to church was the best of times and the worst of times. I love being there. It's where our closest friendships are. It's the place where people say, "How are you really?" Then again, that's kind of the worst of times because I just had no emotional stamina for people to ask me how I was doing really. So for a long time, our family came in late, and that just limited overmuch interaction. That was helpful. So some things that our friends did that were really helpful was after the service, they would just be aware as to when we'd had enough and make an opportunity for us to leave. And that was a great protection.
It took me months to kind of get back to be excited about the future. And I will tell you, since then, now I've gotten remarried recently. I have a blended family that is amazing. My future is completely different than what I thought it was going to be. And this is all part of God's plan. I just got to trust God's plan.
I have hope for eternal life. This world that is broken and sad is not the end. This is not the end of the story. There's a beautiful future ahead of us when we have a life with Jesus.
Nurturing hope keeps you focused on what new life may lie ahead of you. God does have a plan for putting together the shattered pieces of your life.
But as you progress forward in that plan, you'll also need to build up resilience, which will strengthen you to deal with other new challenges that might arise.
It's not necessarily bouncing back to normal or what we would define as normal, because usually after a crisis or after a loss, there's a new normal. Things aren't going to be the same.
Resilience is well illustrated in LaTanya's story of rebuilding her shattered life after her parents were murdered, and she almost died herself.
After losing my parents, my faith was tested, and but I still trusted and believed in God. And He is a good God. He is a merciful God because I'm still alive. I could have been dead along with my parents, but He didn't allow that to happen. He kept me here for a reason. I'm healthy, I'm whole, I'm not paralyzed. I'm able to raise my children, and I have a future, a purpose, and a calling for my life. He built me back up. He healed my mind. He healed my heart and allowed me to forgive. And He's good. And I just love Him so much. I've been able to help other people. I've been able to speak on platforms. By me sharing my story, it has brought healing as well. And that's how I get through and move forward, With my own grief, I just get joy out of seeing other people being blessed and encouraged by my own story. I felt like if I could be strong and resilient and continue to fight and to continue to help people, then it wasn't in vain. My parents' life wasn't in vain. I can use this to help somebody else.
You might not have experienced a traumatic loss as extreme as LaTanya's, but like her, helping others can play a vital role in your healing.
There's more to life than getting over stuff. There is this whole concept of life and that more abundantly in relationship to the God of the universe who has purposed in everything and purpose in me as well. I can start living for something and living into something. And then when you do that, then life really gets exciting. There's so much more than just not being sad. You can go on to the good things that God has for you.
For the first time since he passed away, I'm now volunteering as the vice chair of the board of a local hospital. And this is something that I didn't know I could do, that I was nervous about, but it's something that has been very fulfilling. And it showed me that I can participate in an activity and give back and get work done, even though I'm still grieving.
There is an expected end for your life, and there is a purpose and a calling, or you wouldn't even be here today. And so I just encourage you to stay with God, trust Him, because He will turn that mourning into joy, and He will use your story if you allow Him.
Dr. Shelley Malia describes resilience in terms of 5 components. She thinks of these 5 components like an umbrella, which protects you from the storms of life. The first protective factor she calls internal assets. Internal assets are the knowledge, skills, and talents that have helped you deal with stresses in the past.
All of us have different personalities. We have different ways of looking at the world. Some of us are better problem solvers than others. Some of us feel self-efficacy and the ability to really get through things. Some of us don't. Some of us have personalities that enjoy being around people. Some of us don't. And so that internal assets is really what makes up who you are. And knowing who you are, I think, can help you know how to best navigate through difficult things.
The second protective factor she calls external resources. These are the resources that you might be able to access from community organizations, your church, healthcare providers, or governmental assistance programs.
That really has to do with what you have around you outside of yourself. For us as adults, it might be our work situation, the friends that we have there. It might be our churches. It might be our communities. It might be a club that we're a part of. It might be our neighborhood. But it's the things outside of us that we can draw strength from and that are meaningful to us.
The third protective factor she calls relationships or connections with friends. Giving and receiving help is a natural part of friendships.
There is a correlation between relationships and resilience, that it tends to be a very important part of how we cope. That we need people in our life that we can draw strength from, that we can depend upon, that we can look to in times of difficulty.
The fourth protective factor she calls family dynamics. Every family has patterns of communication and of responding to outside challenges.
Families where there's warmth and limits tend to do better in times of difficulty. We have a lot of input and a lot of responsibility to make sure we're creating an environment where our kids can be resilient, but also making sure that the environment that we're in is working for us as well.
The fifth protective factor she calls faith and spirituality.
There's something special about a relationship with God because it gives us a way of making meaning and it gives us hope. When you put those 5 things together, it really gives a picture of what do I have to work with. And we don't have to have strengths in all areas. We can have strengths in a few areas. But what's important is that we identify those areas that work for us and utilize them.
The more you can develop these 5 components in your life, the more resilience you'll experience whenever you encounter difficulties. They won't prevent all challenges from occurring, but they can help you face those challenges with more confidence and hope.
Here are some examples of how grievers have developed some of the 5 components of resilience. First, Martha sought to use some community resources to help transition to a new life without her husband.
I joined a book club. I joined a Bible study. I joined another club in town and just tried to surround myself with people who I knew would call on me and make sure that I didn't isolate.
Fred sought to strengthen ties with his family so they all could support one another in their transition to life without his wife.
I had a good relationship with all my kids and grandkids, but I wanted to make sure they were okay and that we had reconnected after, the worst time of our life, and went to visit them and spent time with them, and we just kind of rebonded.
Whitney came to understand how important a relationship with the Lord would be for her recovery after the death of her husband.
Before David passed, him and I weren't real religious. I didn't belong to a church or wasn't very active in a church. And then the pastor that did David's service suggested grief share. And I went, and I didn't think I was going to get much out of it because I knew it was a Christ-based program. But the love that I felt the moment that I walked through the door changed my mind, and I just felt peace for the first time in a while. In a while, I felt peace, and that's when I knew a relationship with Christ was something that I needed to explore more of instead of running away from it, because I knew I was going to need more strength to get through the hard times.
We're not saying it's quick or easy, but it is possible. The pieces of your life can be reassembled into something that is meaningful and fulfilling, something that is beautiful.
Jesus is the reason that you can have the hope you've heard about in this session.
And that means as you follow him in your grief journey, you can experience the blessings he promises. Your shattered life will be different, yes. And it can be a testimony to the restoring grace of God.
At times you may wonder, how can I tell if I'm making any progress toward healing? To help answer that question, read the article at the beginning of your participant guide titled, How Do I Know I'm Healing? And look for the 6 Signs of Healing articles found throughout your book. Continue healing through writing with Reflections, a guided journal by GriefShare. The guided journal offers targeted questions that ask you to go deeper into your thoughts and feelings. And the pages offer plenty of space to work through them on paper. The journal also serves as a progress tracker, and there's room to store cherished memories of your loved one. Order your copy today at griefshare.org/journal. Your GriefShare group may be coming to a close, but your healing journey doesn't have to stop. Visit griefshare.org to watch bonus videos from both experts and testimonials, as well as helpful articles and additional resources to help you manage your grief.
I take 2 roses to the place where he died, one for me and one for his son, and leave them at the house.
I took a shoebox and decorated it, and I put letters that I write to my sister in there. I put some of my favorite pictures in there on the anniversary of her passing or on her birthday. That's when I pull out the box.
For many years, our Christmas card always included a picture of Dan. It just brought us peace.
I feel like I'm honoring him by moving on with my life and being happy with my life.
As we move forward and embrace what is next, we're actually continuing and stewarding the legacy.
Thank you for sharing this time with us today. We look forward to talking with you next time.